Welcome back viewers, ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries and anyone with ears or other sound detection organs. Hope you enjoy. We are continuing with Going Native, written by Uncle Sealing. Going Native, Chapter 52. The return to the complex was a bit surreal. Elora had been sending messages back and forth with Investigator Chelza pretty much the entire time they were on the road, which was odd in a few ways. The fact that the agent was still at the facility was weird in itself. That she was taking an active role in the situation at all was another. It was a bit under her pay grade. When Elora finally made it back, she took a moment to look at the pretty blue car parked in front of the hotel. There was no way she would be able to fit in the thing. In fact, it looked like a toy, like a practice car you get for a small child to drive around the yard in. Not what she would have spent 20,000 credits on, but it wasn't her money and, as Agent Chelza had mentioned in the morning during the security shake-up, Stace wasn't her responsibility anymore. At least not legally. She made it to Stace's apartment just as Eskel was leading Jessica out. Stace was looking pretty worn out. Mind checking on him while I show Jessica her room? Of course not. Elora gave Jessica a smile and a nod before slipping through the open door. Ian was there, rubbing Stace's shoulders as he slumped in his chair. The human wasn't asleep, but he did look drained. Ian glanced up as she came in. Stace, Elora's here. It's all right. A shaky right hand came up and offered a thumbs up, but other than that he didn't seem to be moving much. What happened? Elora took the few steps to the wheelchair in fast bounds and her hands were on his face, gently massaging his cheeks and scratching his beard. Just worn out. Tiring couple days. You know that thing he does where he hyper-focuses and handles a situation, then crashes immediately after? It was that. He was doing great, but as soon as Eskel came in to take care of Jessica he slumped over. Ian let go of Stace's shoulders and grabbed the back of the wheelchair. I think it's time for bed. Stace yawned. I need to talk to both of you. It's important. It can wait until after some rest, Elora said gently. I don't think it can. That was concerning. Ian and Elora locked eyes, but the lilac male just shrugged. Together, they got Stace transferred into the bed and climbed in after him. Once Stace was spooned in the middle of the trio, everything settled down. Elora was sure he would fall asleep and they could slip out and let Stace recover. I spoke with Jelsai today. Elora nodded, taking care that her tusks didn't scratch Stace's neck. She told me she gave you a new ID and apologized for how she treated you. That was yesterday. Today Stace went silent and for a moment Elora thought he had fallen asleep mid-sentence. She told me that she wants to date. Date who? Ian's question matched Elora's own confusion. Why would she? Me. She wanted permission to court me romantically. Ian let out a little squawk and Elora felt her mind start spinning. Jelsai Chelza, who had made Stace's life hell but also worked so hard to save it. A noble and interior agent trying to worm her way into a relationship that was both unorthodox and highly suspect. What did you tell her? Ian's voice was small, like a small child trying to avoid hearing bad news. That I'd have to talk to the two of you. The two of us. Ian's fear was obvious in his voice and Elora's heart thudded in her chest. She had already figured it out. Has most of the whole facility figured out, actually. Isn't going to do anything about it. She said she'd help keep prying eyes away. If we let her have you. No. She will help us anyway. Stace let out another jawcracker of a yawn. She's a good person, really. Just sort of, doesn't always think things through. Well, what do you want to do? Elora hoped her fear wasn't showing. Was Stace going to abandon them for a chance at nobility? She knew in her heart that he wouldn't, but the fear was still there. I think I want to give her a chance. Get to know her better and take things slow. Jel is comfortable to be around. Maybe, Stace scooted backwards, cuddling tight against Elora. The four of us can have a date. Play a board game or some. The rest of the sentence was lost as sleep took him. Askel gestured to the door of the hotel room. Thankfully, his hands didn't shake. The little Helcom had been hoping he would have at least a few days to relax before their second date, and instead here was Jessica sharing a building with him only a few hours after their first rendezvous. The room should be keyed to your ID. Just wave it in front of the handle. I'll bring you your clothes and see if I can find you some toiletries. Jessica looked nervous, unsure of herself. Girls aren't supposed to act like this. It was vulnerable, but also reassuring at the same time. Is Stace going to be okay? He just kind of passed out as soon as you got here. He'll be fine. Human or not, he doesn't have a lot of stamina and being around new people wears him out pretty quickly. I'll let him know you asked after him though. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. The young woman leaned close to Askel then, a strangely hungry look in her eyes. This was what he expected with women. Is that stuff true? That humans can work harder than other species out there? A tingling spread across Askel's face and he leaned away slightly, averted his eyes. Yeah. At least, I think so. Well, maybe one day we can test the hypothesis. Her voice was breathy, a puff of warm air across his face. Askel closed his eyes, mouth parting slightly. He knew what would happen next. She would lean in, press their lips together, and... A quiet beep was followed by a clunk as the door opened. He cracked his eyes open and Jessica was gone. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sure you are. Dilek's nostrils flared as she stood up, spiky pink hair bouncing as she leaned over the table. That's it? I'm sure you are. After we saved your friends' lives. Elora stayed seated, breathing calmly. She was going to stay professional and let Dilek prove what Elora already knew, that she was the wrong woman for this job. More than a third of your assault commandos are going up on charges, Dilek. Marines were skipping patrols so they could get high and fuck. 3 of them were abusing hard drugs on site. Elora took a moment to take a deep breath, then locked eyes with Dilek. So yes, I'm sure you are sorry. But I'm not going to miss you. Dilek collapsed back into her chair like a puppet with cut strings. Elora took the moment to continue. We're replacing your entire group with Marines actually trained in security. I would like your recommendations for 3 of your crew to stay behind and serve as guides for the new teams. Dilek didn't have to think for more than a moment. Larry Ulza, Pelli Tara, and Vesper. The 2 Marines who were at the hospital and the Helcom. Any reason for them specifically? Since seeing what happened to your friend, those 2 Marines have been incredibly professional. They weren't involved in any of the trouble here. Vesper has been on the outs with her pod for a while now, mostly due to her lack of enthusiasm for their extracurricular activities. They are all good girls. Standing up, Elora nodded and picked up her pad. Sounds good. One last thing, your co-contacted me and wanted me to pass this on. She hit a couple buttons on her Omnipod and transferred the new orders over. The simmering rage that had been hiding under the surface of Commander Dilek's face collapsed into disbelief as she looked at her new orders. What? Did you really think there wouldn't be repercussions for you? 9 out of 24 commandos under your command are going to prison. There will be a hearing to decide if this facility counts as a red zone. If it is, they are all up for execution for dereliction of duty in combat. You didn't notice what was going on, and watching these girls was literally your only responsibility here. You failed, and your failure might result in the death of your own soldiers. You have to face the consequences. Goodbye, Dalek. Shoulders slumped, Private Dalek stumbled her way out of the room. Interior agents were already waiting with handcuffs. Jessica started at the knock on her door. She would have to apologize for leaving Eskel in the hallway so abruptly, but she was feeling like an emotional wreck and didn't want to do anything she might regret later. She liked her grey boy from the stars and wanted to make sure it all went right. After that she had collapsed on the huge bed and just sort of went blank for a while. Tuned out, as her mother liked to call it. She had expected her visitor to be Eskel, but instead it was a short pale man with a mop of dark hair and piercing blue eyes. As he raised his hand for a fist bump, she noticed a cardboard box at his feet. "I'm Samuel. I'm here to take a look at your Omnipod." He towed the box with one sneakered foot. "And someone left you a box. I think I recognize you, you're one of the tour guides at the observatory, right?" Samuel laughed. "Nobody ever recognizes me, they just remember Sammy." I'm impressed. Of course she remembered him. That tiny pair of tour guides were adorable together. As Jessica handed Samuel her Omnipod, she asked, "Why do you need it?" "Stupid, Jessica. You're supposed to ask that before you give strangers your expensive electronics." "I'll show you." Samuel slid a thin tool into the bezel and the Omnipod made a little pop as it separated into two pieces. "No, that's my..." She reached for it, but he just held up a finger, then flipped the pad over. He grabbed a tiny something in there and yanked it free, then snapped the pad back together with practiced ease. "I just wanted to grab this little guy." He held up a tiny circuit board maybe half the size of a fingernail. "On the plus side, your battery should last a lot longer now." Realization hit Jessica then. Dad was tracking me. It explained a lot, really. How quickly they were able to find her, how often her dad or Cole seemed to show up wherever she was in town. Some of the odd eyes she could swear were following her in Denver. Someone was. "No worries, though. I'm going to have some fun with them." "Ever been to South Dakota?" "No, no." "Well, that's where it's going to look like you're going." "Sorry to bother you so late, have a good night." "Oh, and don't forget your box." The box turned out to contain all of the clothes she had given to Eskel, along with a couple hoodies in different colors with the Painter Observatory logo. There was also a bewildering array of soaps, shampoos, body scrubs, and moisturizers, all very expensive looking with labels entirely in shill. Even if she wasn't the sort of girl who just used the dollar store 3-in-1 shampoo / conditioner / body wash, it would all be way too fancy for her. However, having it somehow made her feel better. Having clothes and shampoo made it feel less like she was on the run and more like she was on a trip. With the new attitude, Jessica decided to take in the room again. Everything was big. This was clearly a Shilvati hotel and everything was Shilvati-sized. Her own hotel, where she could probably never work again, stopped thinking about it, had rooms specifically for male Shilvati that were more human-sized. Jessica didn't know if this place had those, but even if they did, she had clearly received a female-sized room. Everything was just a little too high for her, the kitchenette's countertops almost level with the bottom of her breastbone. She felt like a little kid, but at the same time the fact that it was a hotel, exactly like the one she had been working at for the last 2 years, was soothing. The bathroom was an immediate thrill. An actual tub, sunken into the floor. It was huge. She cranked the tap to hot and ran back to the box. She thought she remembered seeing some. Jackpot. Jessica White, traitor to the human race, exile from her home, was going to have a goddamned bubble bath. Morning came sluggishly to Marion. The previous day had been, well, sort of insane. They had a new guest fleeing from anti-Shilvati insurgents, all the previous security staff were leaving, many in handcuffs, and to top it all off Aang had taken her aside to let her know that investigator Jelsai Chelsa had desires for her husband's boyfriend. Part of her was hoping that she would just whisk Stace away and remove the competition that seemed to take all of her husband's attention, but that was just the jealousy talking. She didn't really mean it. Now it was uncomfortably early and it was time to meet the new security commander. The meeting was taking place in the restaurant, with Samuel and Aang cooking breakfast. There really weren't any dedicated meeting spaces aside from one of the hotel's conference rooms. Perhaps something would have to be set up. Even though Marion was exactly on time, she was the last to arrive. Well, not the last. A counter-intrusion specialist was inbound, but she was coming from off-planet and might take an extra day or two. Ellora was there, talking animatedly with Sammy. I don't care what they did, they shouldn't have to die for it. Nobody was hurt. Sammy stomped their foot in an adorable little tantrum. One of the two newcomers leaned in to interject. You can draft a letter to the sentencing board as the owner of the facility. It would do a lot to help assuage any hard feelings concerning unprofessional behavior, and I'm sure if you made your opinions on their punishment known they would be more lenient. I can help you put something together if you'd like. Sammy calmed right down in an instant. Thank you, I would appreciate that. The elfin physicist noticed Marion then and waved her over. Marion, come and meet the new team. The first woman was short for a Shilvati, wide and somewhat heavy-set. Her hair was silver, not the grey of age but dyed an almost metallic sheen. Probably in her late 20s, early 30s, about the same age as Stace. The first impression was matronly marine. I am Commander Rem Telchek. She raised a dull purple cybernetic hand and shared a fist bump with Marion, accompanied with a soft smile. It is good to meet you, Lieutenant Marion. I look forward to working with you. The other woman was unbelievably plain. Average height, average build, dark hair pulled back. She gave a shy smile and offered her own hand. Scout Captain Pellick. Her voice was soft and unassuming. Introductions complete, the five sat down at a rectangular table. Sammy was centered on one side, Ellora on their right and Marion on their left. The newcomers sat comfortably, with no real tension in the air. Considering what had occurred the previous day, the calmness added its own sort of stress. Samuel arrived at the table, small and adorable in a little apron with his name embroidered on it. We're really not equipped for full service, but I will be providing breakfast. Do any of you have any preferences or dietary restrictions I need to be aware of? Nobody said anything until, what was her name again? Pellick raised her hand timidly. Do you have bacon? Oh. Sammy looked over excitedly. Make her a bacon waffle. Make all of us bacon waffles. All right, bacon waffles it is. Samuel sauntered off and Marion noticed that every person at the table took a moment to admire him. He really did have a great ass. I suppose with that we can start. Commander Rem cleared her throat quietly. I'd like to begin with an apology. While having a bunch of thrill-seekers like assault commandos would never have worked long-term, there is no excuse for such a catastrophic failure like you had. Colonel Itel was livid. Rest assured that my girls will not have the same failings. I have plans for your approval, things I believe will be expensive but necessary. The first is for a perimeter wall. Can't do that. Sammy held up a hand. Sorry for the interruption, but we can't put a wall up. The area around the facility is a protected wildlife preserve and putting up walls or fencing will mess with the migration patterns. Well, they are just animals, surely we can ignore. If I may. Ellora held up her own hand politely. This facility is not meant to be a military base, and significant construction like adding kilometers of walls and fencing will draw a lot more attention than we need. Additionally, the rugged wilderness that surrounds this place effectively prevents attacks from things like car bombs. Even with the troubles we had with the previous team, their patrols were quite effective at keeping us safe. Commander REM let out a quiet rumph. I suppose that makes sense. I did notice how rough the terrain is. In a way, you already have a wall 10 kilometers thick. Ian came by then, dropping off some glasses of water and the tart but tasty orange-colored juice. Everyone thanked the young man, then took a moment to watch Ian's toned but strain his tight slacks as he walked away. Breakfast and a show. How about setting up active radar sweeps and floodlights? Merin jumped at the noise. Somehow she had totally forgotten that Pelik was there. Can't do that. Sammy's almost cartoonish frown seemed to take up her entire face. Sorry. The ambient light from the floods would interfere with our main telescope, and active radar scanning really messes with our radio telescope array. We already do a lot of filtering for the bonkers amount of wireless signals, but active radar would make our radio telescopes completely useless. REM sighed. Which would, of course, defeat the point of the facility. You certainly gave us some unique challenges. And hopefully some unique solutions. Ellora picked up a small case off the floor and opened it, withdrawing a sphere about the size of one of Merin's fists. It looked to be a ball of black glass, the top half covered in thin copper tracings. Ellora threaded a stand on the bottom and stood it up in the center of the table. Show time. Merin pulled out her tablet and connected to what she and Samuel had taken to calling cam balls. The official name was Security Sphere MK1, but Sam was the sort of guy who could appreciate some good feminine humor. The top of the ball unfolded, covers swinging up and exposing a clear tube filled with electronics. It came online and Merin spun her pad around so everyone could see the results. We have about 200 fabricated so far and the printers are pumping out more as we speak. What do you think? What, exactly, is it? Again, Pelik managed to startle Merin. How did the woman do that? Merin had a whole speech prepared, but now she felt flat-footed. It's a solar-powered, completely independent security camera. Sees invisible, infrared, and ultraviolet, plus has an omnidirectional microphone. You can thread them on a long pole, put them in a tree, basically anywhere. They are cheap and the entire bottom is a wide-angle lens. She tapped the Omnipod and showed the distorted view of all of them around the table, then tapped it again and the view became a remarkably crisp wide shot of the entire room. The best part is that they communicate with each other via a wireless mesh network and an optical laser link. As long one is in line of sight with another or within about 200 meters, they can pass the signal along. Each unit can connect to up to 20 other units this way, and each one is responsible for a large part of its signal processing, so it's almost infinitely scalable. Pelik's voice raised a little. The woman actually seemed excited. And, since they are completely self-contained, we can place them wherever we need them without worrying about infrastructure as long as they can chain back to the source. Even move them around without needing to make any changes. What's to stop somebody from just moving them out of the way and making a safe corridor? Samuel interrupted, carrying a tray loaded with plates. Aside from the fact that we'd see them doing it, each unit has an accelerometer, GPS, and motion tracking. The software is smart. If you so much as tap one with your finger and you haven't cleared it with the facility, alarms go off back here. The software can also pick up the difference between animal noises and speech, bipedal footfalls, plus common manufactured sounds. He started placing plates down. Each had some sort of thick, crispy cake covered with square indents. There were flecks of salted meat embedded in the cake itself, as well as strips on top. On the side of each were 3 fried eggs and a small pile of shredded and fried root vegetables. Butter and dark syrup accompanied the meal. Wait, you know about this? Commander Rem seemed a mix of enchanted and concerned as she looked at Samuel. Merin snickered to herself. Rem thought he was just a cook. I designed the hardware and Merin and I wrote the software together. Everybody here wears multiple hats. Hats. Sorry. Everybody here has different jobs. I fix things and do hardware and software design. Sammy is our lead research physicist and the co-owner. Merin is Sammy's personal security, research assistant, and is broadly responsible for our digital security. Eyeing over there with the cute smile is our business manager. Samuel stopped to think. I think the only person who just does one job is Elora. A Skell only has one job. Sammy cut in. Not true, he's Stace's personal nurse, but he also was doing medical for the commando team. Pelik was back to being quiet, up until she took a bite of her waffle. The resulting moan drew everyone's attention and, with that, discussion stopped so breakfast could begin. End of chapter. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss any episode and do all the other YouTube stuff, visit and support the author, and I'll see you next time. If you didn't enjoy, comment on what I can do better. And as usual, have a wonderful day.